Imagine a small English town on the brink of change. Its cobblestone streets lined with modest houses and grander estates. Its marketplace bustling with merchants and tradesmen. Its church towers and country lanes still echoing with old traditions, even as the winds of reform and progress begin to stir. This is Middlemarch, a fictional Midland community in the 1830s, where the tides of social, political, and industrial change are quietly reshaping the lives of everyone within its borders. George Eliot's monumental novel Middlemarch is not just about one central character or a single grand adventure. It's about an entire web of interconnected destinies, the dreams, loves, failures, and revelations of everyday people whose fates intertwine in surprising and profound ways. At the heart of Middlemarch lies a rich tapestry of characters, each one brimming with hopes and fears, each facing moments of moral choice that will define them. In some ways, it's a story about ordinary individuals struggling for meaning, justice, and love in a world that can be both compassionate and cruel. Yet the novel is also a quiet revolution, nudging its readers to question what constitutes true happiness, what makes a marriage thrive or crumble, and what it means to be a force for good in one's community. Our journey begins with one of the most remarkable and idealistic characters in the story, Dorothea Brooke. Young, beautiful, earnest, and spiritually hungry, Dorothea is a woman out of step with the traditional feminine molds of her time. Raised by her uncle, Mr. Brooke, who is genial but somewhat distracted and not always perceptive, Dorothea yearns for a higher purpose in life. She imagines herself devoting her existence to grand projects that will improve the lot of others, perhaps designing model cottages for the poor or immersing herself in scholarly work. She is impatient with the trivialities of fashion and social chatter, preferring instead to dream of intellectual and moral greatness. Dorothea's sister, Celia, is her opposite, pragmatic, more conventional, more interested in material comfort and the delicate proprieties of society. Early on, we see how different the two sisters are when they inherit their mother's jewelry. Celia is delighted with the beautiful pieces, while Dorothea finds them frivolous and distracting, preferring to remain plain and unadorned. This tension reveals Dorothea's ascetic streak, an unwavering determination to sacrifice earthly pleasures for what she perceives as nobler ends. But Dorothea's greatest test is yet to come. She soon meets Edward Casaubon, a middle-aged clergyman and scholar who is hard at work. So he claims, on a magnum opus, a vast, all-encompassing key to all mythologies, which he believes will revolutionize our understanding of human civilization. To Dorothea, Casaubon's intellectual pursuits are irresistible. He seems like a man engaged in the grand, scholarly mission she admires, a guide and partner in the spiritual quest she longs to undertake. Against the advice and skepticism of friends and family, who see Casaubon as a dry pedant, old enough to be her father, Dorothea marries him. She does so with high hopes, imagining a partnership of the mind and spirit, a journey into rarefied intellectual heights. Alas, it will not be the Eden she anticipates. Meanwhile, other dramas unfold across Middlemarch. We meet Tertius Lydgate, a young, ambitious doctor newly arrived in town. He is determined to revolutionize medicine, to bring in more scientific practices and modern techniques. Lydgate is principled and enthusiastic, but also somewhat naive about the community he's entering. Middlemarch is old-fashioned, and its entrenched networks of influence run deep. Wealthy patrons like the banker Nicholas Bulstrode hold subtle power, and old doctors like Mr. Wrench have their own way of doing things. Lydgate's modern ideas are met with polite interest but also suspicion. Yet Lydgate's greatest challenge will come not from the medical field alone, but from his personal life. He soon meets Rosamond Vincy, a dazzling young woman celebrated for her beauty, charm, and social grace. Rosamond comes from a family of rising fortunes. Her father, Mr. Vincy, is a tradesman of moderate wealth. She has refined tastes, a love of luxury, and the desire to rise in society. The moment Rosamond sets eyes on Lydgate, she envisions him as the perfect husband, a gentleman doctor who will carry her into a more glamorous life. Lydgate, meanwhile, is enchanted by Rosamond's loveliness and delicate manners. He is convinced she will provide the domestic harmony he needs to pursue his grand medical reforms. Their courtship is a delicate dance of smiles, whispered compliments, and imagined futures. But neither truly understands the other's nature. Lydgate underestimates the depth of Rosamond's vanity and materialism, while Rosamond does not grasp the precariousness of Lydgate's professional standing and the weight of his ambitions. Their marriage will prove as challenging, in its own way, as Dorothea's union with Casaubon. Within the interlinked circles of Middlemarch society, we also find Fred and Mary, a pair whose struggles highlight themes of responsibility, morality, and hope. Fred Vincy, Rosamond's brother, is a handsome young man with easy charm but little discipline. He aspires to become a clergyman, primarily to please his family, though it's clear he lacks the scholarly dedication required. Fred is also in love with Mary Garth, a plain but intelligent and morally steadfast young woman who works as a companion and governess in various households. Mary is wise beyond her years, clear-eyed about Fred's faults, yet deeply fond of him. She refuses to marry him unless he proves himself reliable and hardworking. Their relationship is a long, slow burn. Fred must transform himself from a carefree spendthrift into a man of substance, and Mary must decide if he is worth waiting for. Surrounding them is Mary's family, the Garths, especially her father Caleb Garth, a kind and principled land agent who values honesty and industry above all else. Caleb's quiet integrity stands as a moral touchstone in the community. Overseeing much of this social tapestry is Mr. Brooke, Dorothea's uncle, who fancies himself a progressive political figure, though his efforts often come off as bumbling and half-baked. He hires Wladislaw, a young idealistic relative of Casaubon, who has a flair for art and journalism. Will is warm-hearted, generous, and forward-thinking. He admires Dorothea from afar, respecting her intellect and courage, but their relationship remains platonic for a time, especially given Dorothea's marriage to Casaubon. Still, the subtle chemistry between Dorothea and Will hums in the background, providing a kind of emotional counterpoint to the dryness of Casaubon's scholarly pursuits. Back at Dorothea's new home, Casaubon's estate of Lawick, disillusionment sets in. Edward Casaubon is not the intellectual giant Dorothea imagined. Instead, he is petty, insecure, and fearful that he will never complete his great work. He spends his days cloistered in his study, jealously guarding his research, rebuffing Dorothea's attempts to assist. When they travel to Rome for their honeymoon, Dorothea is awed by the grandeur of ancient ruins and masterpieces of art, but her new husband shows little romantic feeling. Instead, he is peevish and distant, irritated that Dorothea does not simply worship his intellect without question. It is in Rome that Dorothea first truly meets Wladislaw, who is staying in the city as well. Will's lively conversation and empathetic nature stand in stark contrast to Casaubon's coldness, awakening in Dorothea the first faint realization that her marriage may not be the spiritual partnership she longed for. Meanwhile, Tertius Lydgate's initial enthusiasm in Middlemarch's medical arena hits roadblocks. He tries to reform the local hospital and update the treatment of patients, but quickly runs into political complications. Who controls the hospital's funds? How can he secure his position without kowtowing to Bulstrode's moralistic pressure or the old guard's traditions? Lydgate's noble ideals start to erode as he realizes that to achieve his goals, he may need to make compromises with people he doesn't admire. His marriage to Rosamond progresses, and though at first it seems blissful, fissures soon appear. Rosamond's expensive tastes strain Lydgate's finances. She insists on a certain lifestyle, lovely furniture, delicate curtains, a sense of refinement that Lydgate cannot afford. Soon, debts pile up. Instead of the supportive home he imagined, Lydgate faces an endless series of financial pressures. Rosamond, when confronted, plays the victim or simply avoids reality, leaving Lydgate to shoulder the burdens alone. Across town, Fred Vincey's troubles come to a head when a debt he incurred, betting on a horse he was sure would yield profit, fails. He involves Mary Garth's family when he asks Mary's father Caleb to co-sign a loan with him. When Fred cannot repay, the Garths suffer. Mary's disappointment in Fred is palpable. She still cares about him, but his irresponsibility and inability to think beyond himself truly hurt her. Fred must learn humility, find honest work, and earn back the Garth family's respect. He takes a job working under Caleb Garth to learn the ropes of honest labor. This path toward redemption is painful but transformative. Over time, Fred matures, gaining a sense of responsibility, patience, and genuine empathy, which slowly wins Mary's admiration once more. While Fred's journey is one of moral education, the grand drama lies in the fates of Dorothea, Casaubon, Ladislaw, and Tertius Lydgate. As Dorothea grows more unhappy, Casaubon senses her disappointment. Paranoid and jealous, he fears that Dorothea's goodwill and respect have slipped away. His health begins to fail, and soon he is bedridden, still clinging to the hope of completing his great key to all mythologies. Before he dies, however, Casaubon crafts a cruel and manipulative codicil to his will. If Dorothea ever marries Ladislaw after Casaubon's death, she will lose all the property he leaves her. With this stroke of his pen, Casaubon tries to control Dorothea's fate even from the grave, revealing not only his jealousy and possessiveness, but also his desperate need to thwart any happiness she might find with Will. When Casaubon eventually dies, Dorothea is left a wealthy widow, but one with a moral puzzle. Should she stay true to Casaubon's memory, or follow her heart toward Ladislaw, whom she has come to admire deeply? The codicil hangs over her like a specter, making her question Will's motives and her own. If Casaubon's death represents one kind of reckoning, another is emerging around Nicholas Bulstrode, the banker who has financed many of the town's ventures, including Lydgate's medical ambitions. Bulstrode presents himself as a devout, God-fearing man, a pillar of the community. But there are dark shadows in his past. It emerges that Bulstrode built his fortune through dubious means, involving shady deals and moral compromises. One day, a man named Raffles arrives in Middlemarch, an old associate who knows Bulstrode's secrets. He threatens to expose Bulstrode's past misdeeds unless he is paid off. Bulstrode panics, feeling the walls close in around him. In a desperate bid to maintain his respectability, he tries to rid himself of Raffles. When Raffles falls ill, Bulstrode hires Lydgate to treat him. Lydgate, working according to sound medical judgment, prescribes certain treatments. But Bulstrode, frightened that Raffles might recover and talk, mismanages the care by withholding proper instructions or assistance. Raffles dies under suspicious circumstances, and whispers begin to circulate that Lydgate is implicated in the scandal. Lydgate, who has done nothing knowingly wrong, finds his reputation under siege. Having already made small compromises by accepting Bulstrode's patronage, he now looks suspect in the eyes of townspeople eager for a scapegoat. Rosamond offers Lydgate no solace in this crisis. Instead, she sinks into despair, blaming him for losing their social standing. Without her support, Lydgate is isolated. He must either prove his innocence or leave Middlemarch to start fresh elsewhere. Fortunately, Dorothea emerges as a compassionate friend. Moved by her sense of justice and kindness, she meets with Lydgate, questions him, and becomes convinced of his innocence. She tries to use her moral influence and personal resources to help clear his name. Dorothea's intervention on Lydgate's behalf is one of the novel's pivotal moral moments. She becomes a figure of empathy and clarity in a muddy moral world. During this delicate period, Dorothea and Ladislaw's relationship intensifies. Now free of Casaubon, Dorothea wrestles with new feelings. Her admiration for Will's generosity and sincerity blossoms into love, but the codicil looms in her mind. If she marries Will, she loses all Casaubon's money, a severe blow to her plans of social good. Many in town also suspect Will of having angled for Dorothea's fortune all along. Yet Will's pride and honesty shine through. He will not let Dorothea sacrifice her wealth for him, and he insists that he never wanted Casaubon's property. He loves Dorothea for herself. Still, gossip abounds. Dorothea must decide whether to follow her heart despite social scandal and financial cost. This choice represents a critical shift in Dorothea's understanding of fulfillment. No longer is she chained to a loveless marriage for the sake of intellectual grandeur. She has the freedom to choose a partner who respects her mind and soul. In the end, Dorothea marries Ladislaw, relinquishing Casaubon's money. Their union symbolizes hope, sincerity, and the rejection of manipulation and greed. Another crisis converges around Bulstrode. His past is laid bare. He once married a wealthy woman under questionable circumstances and profited from a fortune that should have gone to someone else. As the community learns of this, they turn against him. Bulstrode's moral downfall is swift and merciless. His supposed piety is revealed as a mask. Bereft of respect, shunned by those who once deferred to him, Bulstrode faces a lonely exile. The scandal also pushes Lydgate to leave Middlemarch. He and Rosamond depart to start anew in London, where Lydgate continues his medical work, eventually making a modest name for himself, but never achieving the grand reforms he once envisioned. His marriage never becomes the supportive bond he hoped for, and though they have children and go on living, Lydgate dies young, never fully realizing his dreams. Rosamond, after his death, marries a wealthy older man, securing the comfort and social standing she has always craved. In this bittersweet fate, the novel underscores the theme that noble ambitions can be thwarted by an unforgiving environment or by poor marital choices. Meanwhile, Fred Vincey's slow and steady metamorphosis wins him Mary Garth's hand in marriage. He becomes a responsible, honest man working under Caleb Garth, learning from the older man's example. Their love story, once imperiled by Fred's irresponsibility, finds its resolution in a life of shared labor, mutual respect, and modest happiness. Though not grand or heroic, their marriage stands as one of the novel's healthiest and most hopeful unions. It proves that moral growth and patient steadfastness can yield a quietly fulfilling life. The Garth family's integrity and kindness remain a moral anchor in the community. Caleb Garth continues to work hard and treat people fairly, shaping a legacy of honesty and diligence. Mary's wise, gentle influence on Fred ensures that the next generation will be grounded and empathetic. In a world shaken by scandal and disappointment, their corner of Middlemarch stands for stability and virtue. Mr. Fairbrother, a kind-hearted clergyman and friend to many, also emerges with grace. He has long harbored feelings for Mary Garth, but he is too decent to pursue her once he realizes her heart belongs to Fred. Instead, he encourages Fred to become a better man for Mary's sake. His selflessness and good counsel mark him as one of the gentlest souls in the story. Fairbrother never marries Mary, but he maintains warm friendships and improves the lives of those around him, illustrating that not all rewards in life are found in romantic conquest. Some are found in doing good quietly and consistently. In the end, Dorothea and Ladislaw represent a union of visionary spirit and passionate feeling. Although they must live with less wealth than Dorothea once possessed, they find happiness in each other and in the causes they support. Their marriage is blessed with children, and Dorothea channels her idealism into good works, using her influence, however limited by her new financial situation, to help others. Will pursues art and politics, inspired by Dorothea's moral fervor. They become a couple who, in their own modest sphere, try to live according to their principles. Reflecting on the whole of Middlemarch, we see that Eliot's narrative is less about individual heroes conquering the world and more about the delicate interplay of character, society, and fate. The novel's setting, a provincial English town on the cusp of the Reform Bill of 1832, provides a backdrop of political and social flux. Traditional hierarchies are beginning to crack. New ideas in science and medicine challenge old practices. Economic shifts and moral reckonings reshape reputations and fortunes. This transitional period tests each character's moral fiber. Who can adapt to new ways with grace and integrity, and who clings to old illusions. Central themes emerge again and again. One of the most prominent is the nature of marriage. The novel offers a spectrum of marital dynamics. Dorothea and Casaubon, mismatched and suffocated by misunderstanding. Lydgate and Rosamond, who failed to form a true partnership because of clashing values and unmet expectations. Fred and Mary, who build a solid foundation on honesty, patience, and moral growth. And finally, Dorothea and Will, who form a loving bond based on mutual respect and intellectual sympathy. By showing multiple marriages, Eliot critiques the 19th century institution, questioning the idea that women must sacrifice their own growth and happiness for their husband's ambitions. Dorothea's eventual choice to follow love rather than wealth is a subtle defiance of the social order and a vindication of her right to intellectual and emotional fulfillment. Another key theme is the idea that even the smallest, seemingly insignificant choices have ripple effects throughout a community. Middlemarch is structured like a web. A loan taken out by Fred affects the Garth family's finances and Mary's respect for him. Bulstrode's past moral failures, hidden for decades, explode into scandal, tainting Lydgate's reputation. Casaubon's jealousy and insecurity cast a long shadow over Dorothea and Will's happiness. Every individual action connects to the broader social fabric. Eliot reminds us that society is made of countless interwoven threads, and a single cut or knot can alter the entire pattern. Moral complexity is a third essential theme. Few characters are purely good or purely evil. Casaubon is not monstrous. He is a weak, insecure man caught in the trap of his own intellectual vanity. Rosamond is not malicious, just shallow and raised to value appearances over substance. Bulstrode is a hypocrite, but also a man tortured by conscience. Lydgate's failings do not erase his good intentions. Dorothea's fervor can be naive, and Will's pride can be prickly. By giving us layered personalities, Eliot encourages compassion and understanding. The reader is asked to see the human struggle inside each character, the push and pull of ego, love, duty, and fear. The setting of Middlemarch itself is drawn with exquisite care. We wander through its landscapes, the fields that Caleb Garth manages, the drawing rooms where polite conversation hides social maneuvering, the hospital wards where outdated treatments face new methods, the dusty libraries and studies where Casaubon and others brood over manuscripts. We feel the slow pulse of a provincial life. Church bells on Sunday, market days filled with chatter, the seasonal rhythms of harvest and holiday. Eliot paints the town as a living organism, with a collective consciousness shaped by gossip, tradition, and slow-moving change. This immersive atmosphere makes the characters' struggles feel both intimate and universal. As the novel concludes, we see that life in Middlemarch goes on. The world will not stand still. Just as the Reform Bill hints at a political future more open to broader representation, personal destinies in Middlemarch suggest that human beings can learn, grow, and adapt. Some dreams are dashed, like Lydgate's grand medical reforms. Yet he does leave behind some improvements and a lingering inspiration for future generations. Bulstrode's fall from grace reminds everyone that moral reckoning is inevitable, even if delayed. Fred and Mary's modest future shows that happiness can be built on simple virtues and honest love. Dorothea's emancipation from a stifling marriage into one guided by mutual respect and affection suggests that the world can make room for a new kind of female hero, one defined not by grand external triumphs, but by inner moral strength and the courage to choose love on her own terms. Above all, Middlemarch teaches us about empathy. Dorothea ends the story not as a grand historical figure, but as a good woman quietly shaping the well-being of those around her. Eliot famously writes in the finale that the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, on the number of people who live faithfully in hidden corners. Dorothea's life may not be remembered by statues or history books, but the love, generosity, and moral purpose she embodies send ripples of goodness into the future. In essence, the novel reframes what heroism means, suggesting that true heroism can be found not in grand gestures, but in steadfast kindness, in understanding others, and in persisting toward what is right even in the face of disappointment and loss. Dorothea's idealism meets reality. Her marriage to Casaubon transforms from a spiritual quest into a profound disappointment as she discovers her husband's intellectual fragility and emotional coldness. Lydgate's reforms thwarted, the ambitious young doctor arrives with a vision, but is ultimately entangled in petty politics, social suspicion, and debt. His brilliant future dims as reality grinds down his high hopes. Rosamond's and Lydgate's marital disillusion. Their union, begun in romance and admiration, unravels under the strain of debts and differing values. Both long for understanding, but neither can fully bridge the gap. Fred and Mary's slow, steady love, amidst drama and scandal, their quiet courtship offers a beacon of hope. Fred's moral education and Mary's steadfast character show that love thrives on honesty and patience. Bulstrode's moral collapse. Once a pillar of the community, Bulstrode's secret past and moral cowardice come to light, shattering his reputation and showing that piety without genuine integrity is hollow. Dorothea and Will's redemption. After Casaubon's death and the revelation of his manipulative will, Dorothea chooses love and authenticity over wealth and social approval. Her union with Ladislaw symbolizes a hopeful future grounded in sincerity and mutual respect. Through all these interwoven threads, Middlemarch stands as a grand portrait of human life, its passions, compromises, heartbreaks, and quiet triumphs. Eliot does not give us heroes who conquer armies or empires. Instead, she gives us people struggling to understand themselves and to live decently in a complicated world. The stakes may be humble: reputations, marriages, small fortunes. But the moral grandeur lies in how characters respond to these everyday tests. By the time we finish the tale, we understand that Middlemarch's streets and fields, its parlors and farms, are universal stages on which the human drama of striving and suffering, loving and hoping, plays out endlessly. In reading or hearing this story, we are asked to see something of ourselves in the citizens of Middlemarch, their longings and confusions, their attempts at betterment, their moral dilemmas. And by identifying with them, we learn about the enduring power of compassion and empathy. No one is beyond fault. No one is without some spark of goodness. In this, Eliot offers a message as timely now as in the era she depicts, that understanding others, truly seeing them in their complexity, is the key to forging a better, kinder world. As the final pages of Middlemarch suggest, Dorothea's grand ambitions never result in the extraordinary legacy she once imagined. Instead, she finds a quieter fulfillment, living a life that does good in small but meaningful ways. It is a gentle reminder that while not all of us may have the chance to be world changers on a grand scale, we can still shape the world for the better, one compassionate choice at a time. In the end, Middlemarch speaks to the humanity in all of us, a reminder that our internal struggles, our personal transformations, and our acts of kindness are what define us in the ongoing tapestry of life.